Hey everybody, how's it going again? As you know me as Psych Today I wanted to do a video on the stages of psychosocial development developed by Eric Erickson. Eric Erickson was an American German psychologist who based his theory off of psychoanalytics. Psychoanalytics was the originator was Sigmund Freud, and he focused on the ego, ID, and superego. The ID in Freud's theory is the inherent biological need of almost like evolutionary psychology, that inherent need to have to procreate and to engage in behaviors that aren't necessarily considered the norm. Then you have the ego, which weighs the pros and cons between it, almost creates like some sort of equilibrium between the ID and the superego. And the superego is the need to be accepted by others, while the idea is that need to, that animalistic instinct, and the ego outweighs in between. And that's where Erickson's theory focuses on the ego part. It takes almost like a environmental perspective into development. Even though later on, in later articles that he wrote later on after he made this theory, he says that this theory takes more of an emotional perspective, and it should be looked at more as a way of thinking rather than so much a way of following development. With his theory, there's a couple cons, which I'll mention towards the end of the video, but pretty much his theory is based off 8 stages in development, and each stage happens at a certain time frame in our upbringing or in our lifespan, and these crises must be met, and the way that these crises are met are the way our personality is shaped up. So, for example, let me grab the marker here. The trust versus mistrust stage tends to happen between birth through 18 months. The first part of his theory is the trust versus mistrust. So basically, when we're born, when an infant's born, they're uncertain about the world. There's a lot of unknowns. And it depends on the parent to provide a certain type of caregiving style or parenting style where the infant feels comfortable and they can have some sort of reliability on the parent. They can have some sort of consistency in their life, so they trust, not only develop that trust with the parent, secure attachment style if you want to relate it, but also so they can start trusting the world. When this stage happens between birth and 18 months, the child can, according to him, develop a sense of the world that's mistrusting. You can look at it as more of an insecure attachment style, if you want to look at it like that, or maybe the kid or the infant doesn't feel like that's a good environment for them. They're always anxious and stuff, and this can trickle down. None of these paradigms are separate; they're all intertwined. So after 18 months, and the parent hopefully has provided some sort of reliability in their caregiving style, and the kid has developed a sense of trust for the world, we go on to the next one, which is the autonomy versus shame and doubt stage, which happens between 18 months through 3 years. During this stage, the kid is trying to build some sort of independence. They're exploring. Not independence per se, but they're exploring the world. They're starting to play with different toys. They're starting to learn how to go to the bathroom. They're starting to learn what's right and what's wrong to a certain extent within the family. And it's the parents' job to provide that perfect balance of them exploring and them engaging with toys. And if the parent lets them do it enough, they can build some sort of, they can feel like they start realizing they're their own entity. If the parent is too strict and controlling, they can develop shame and doubt in their approach to certain situations or toys. This later on in life can lead to insecurity issues or in them not feeling confident in their approach. The The next one is the initiative versus guilt stage. And encouragement will create initiative. And this happens between 3 to 5 years old. If the parent, for example, this is typically the time where like the kids will begin to start taking initiative. They'll start going to the bathroom alone. They'll start engaging the world in a way where they need encouragement. Oh, I can do this. I can. They start developing some sort of self-confidence. If the parent's always putting them down, if the parent's always trying to put a stop into it, then they can develop a sense of guilt. And the parent must always, in each stage of these crises, in the early stages at least, the parent's a big involvement in a person's personality. A parent is without the parent having proper parenting styles, as I've done in my other videos, we can look at this developmental theory through the lens of if they don't reach it, it's going to have some negative consequences. So the next stage is industry versus inferiority. This one's between ages 5 through 12 years old. During this stage, peers become a bigger role for the person. So if not only do kids begin to learn how to read and write and they start feeling good about meeting the needs of society, the society in which they live in, the culture that they live in. If they feel like they're learning necessary skills, if they're being productive in a sense, even at a young age, according to Erickson, they'll start feeling a feeling of industry. They can create, they can hopefully I guess he's assuming there's some sort of link between age 5 and 12 and how they're going to be for the rest of society. And you can look at that also in association with the lens of trauma. If a child during this stage has some sort of traumatic event that affects them, they can experience this crisis stage and a stage of inferiority, lack of self-confidence for the future. So we can see how this can be relatable, but remember Erickson's theory lacks a lot of research, and he, like I said earlier, saw it more as a way to think rather than to use this as a factual basis for everything. Next is identity versus role confusion, which is what pretty much made Erickson's theory famous, because he coined the term identity crisis. I think this term is very important, identity crisis, because he coined it, and I think that's something that we all go through. This one happens between 12 years old through 20 years old. He coined that term, and when we think about it, in the adolescent stage and even young adulthood, or late teens, 20s, early 20s, a lot of times we're in college, or if we're not in college, we're still unsure of ourselves, and we don't know what we're doing with our lives. We don't know if we want to settle down and have kids yet. We don't know who we're going to be. We're choosing careers. We're trying to decide who we are inside and try and choose actions and behaviors that cater towards who we think that we are. And that's why this stage is so important. It sets the tempo for what we're going to do, a sequence of actions to engage in so we feel good with ourselves. If I want to be a firefighter and all of a sudden my parents are making me go to med school, there's going to be some sort of role confusion there. That's why parents are so important in each stage, especially the earlier ones. If we want to be a firefighter and our parents are helping us in a way in their caregiving style to promote actions that cater towards what I want to be, and they accept me for who I am, along with teachers and other important community leaders within the child's life or this person's life, then they'll develop an identity, and that's so crucial. Remember, if there's a crisis that isn't resolved, let's say the first one, trust versus mistrust, it can affect the rest of them. And this one, a lot of times, before this one can be met, this identity, you have to resolve unresolved conflicts from past crises if they weren't explored in a healthy manner. Let's look at the next one. Intimacy versus isolation. This one happens between 20 years old through 40 years old. I'm filming myself, guys, so I hope that the camera can get everything. And excuse my bad handwriting. In the intimacy versus isolation, if it's successful, a person will learn how to love. This is why Erikson's theory gets a lot of heat, because some psychologists and research shows that it's even earlier that we begin to learn what love is. Children even have a concept sometimes by 10 years old. They understand that love is an abstract concept, but they have a sort of a feeling of what it is. And here he says that we learn how to build, we start leaving relationships and making the most important relationships like our parents, we start leaving those behind, whether it's through the natural course of nature of old parents and caregivers passing away, and we start forming new relationships with our future wife or our future husband, new friends that are associated with our new lifestyle that we chose in the previous stage when we found our identity. Because once we find our identity, we tend to have a path of where we're going next. And we start choosing the relationships, healthy relationships, off what we want. There's some sort of now, our decisions match who we are. And this is where this stage is important. A lot of times during the ages of 20 and 40, people are choosing their partners. That's the way society has taken its role. Every individual goes through that a little bit. Sometimes at a later age, some people don't find partners till their late 30s. As you know, the 30s is the new 20s. With the way technology has taken the lifespan and it's gone further. So between the ages of 40 and 60 years old, 40 years old through 60 years, we start trying to pass on what we know to others. We start trying to have an effect, a positive effect on society. And if we feel like we're having a positive effect on society, having kids or anything of that sort, then we develop a sense of generativity instead of stagnation. We don't feel like we've been nothing in this world. We feel like if we feel like we've been nothing, we haven't succeeded in anything, we're not doing anything with ourselves, we're not helping society as a whole, we feel a sense of stagnation. It's very important during this stage between 40 and 60 that a person starts growing and giving back to society, because society, depending on what society gave to them. Last stage, guys, integrity versus despair. In integrity versus despair, a person looks, it's from 65, typically, through death. A person looks back at their lives and they have to find meaning in what they did. Not only meaning, but they have to feel like if they did build positive relationships, if they did give back to society, that they were the person who they thought they were, they lived their life to the fullest to what they thought it could have been. If a person feels as if they were accomplished, they'll develop a sense of integrity within themselves. If they didn't, they'll develop a sense of despair, and they'll be unhappy with themselves for the remaining lifespan. That can be catastrophic, because we know that the feelings and towards oneself has direct consequences health-wise, whether conscious or unconscious. But the main thing I wanted to focus on in this theory, and I hope this video has been informative, is Erikson's coined term of identity crisis. Next time, depending on your age, you young cats out there, you young people, when you're between the ages of 12 and 20, I hope you guys realize that in Erikson's theory, this is his focus, for you guys to find your identity. to an extent, we all go to an identity crisis because it's not like we're born knowing what we're gonna do. That doesn't work like that. We have to find ourselves. We have to find who we are, what we're gonna do, how we handle things, why we do things, and that all falls under identity. So I hope this video is informative, guys. Have a good day, all right?